Good afternoon, everyone. The Ateneo Naga University Creative Endeavor Council welcomes you all to this webinar with the theme Literature, Fiction, and Truth-Telling Amid Online Misinformation. I am Apple Olayan Reita from the Literature and Language Studies Department of Ateneo Naga University, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon's event. I would also like to welcome all our participants via Facebook Live. So to those who will not be able to participate via Zoom, you can join this event through our FB Live. And kindly share also the link of this webinar in Facebook. As we commence this undertaking, we implore God's grace and guidance through our opening prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us put ourselves in the holy presence of our God. Heavenly Father, thank you for this gift of creation that makes things possible. We are grateful for all your graces despite the challenges of everyday life. Thank you for blessing us today with a wonderful opportunity to meet virtually and learn together at this remarkably exciting website. Your guidance and wisdom be with us as we share knowledge and skills through our resource speakers and facilitators. Work together as we continue to aim for excellence, render service in places where help and compassion are most needed. We humbly commit this webinar to you as we all bring the glory, honor, and greatness for your kingdom and holy name. All of this we pray in the name of our dear Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Now, may I call in Sir Joseph Reboriano, Chair, Creative Endeavors Council, for the welcome message.
Good afternoon. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. Let me express my gratitude to the CEC Literature Unit for organizing this activity in celebration of National Literature Month. I thank our University President, Father Robert Rivera of the Society of Jesus, the Office for Research and Creative Endeavors headed by Dr. Marz Fajardo, and the University Research Council headed by Dr. Eric Lagdameo for their guidance and assistance for this ever first activity of the ADNO Creative Endeavors Council since its institutionalization in April last year. Today, we aim to renew our appreciation and understanding of the functional role of literature and fiction in nation building and truth telling, and their part in raising awareness on intersectionality amid the continuing threat of online misinformation. I also thank those who extended help in making this activity possible, and I especially thank our speakers for this activity, for gracing us with their yes to realizing the objectives of this webinar. I have been informed that there are participants here from other universities, not only in Bicol region, but universities in Metro Manila. I welcome you all to this webinar. And to all of you who are here because you believe that the truth is among those that liberate us from ignorance, injustice, poverty, and all adversities that impede our growth as persons in the society, I welcome you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Joseph. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of our CEC members and, of course, the faculty members who are here with us today. Before we proceed to the lecture proper, let me remind everyone of the webinar guidelines. For registered participants, kindly use your full name and affiliation on Zoom. For ADNU students, kindly indicate your subject code and section. Kindly put your microphone on mute to avoid interrupting our speakers. Please also refrain from leaving the Zoom call. Write your comments and questions in the in-call messages. Questions on microphone will be accommodated during the open forum. Just simply click the raise hand button. And e-certificates will only be issued to those who have registered, completed the sessions, and filled out the evaluation form. Now we proceed to the main event. Let me now introduce our first speaker. He is a PhD in philosophy candidate from De La Salle University. This June, he is scheduled to have his final defense of his dissertation on the hermeneutical groundings of cosmopolitan philosophy. He received his Master of Arts in Philosophy from Ateneo de Manila University. At present, he is a member of the philosophy department of the Ateneo de Naga University, where he also served as its chair. He specializes in hermeneutics, phenomenology, philosophy of religion, and contemporary metaphysics. He has published his research articles in international and local journals of philosophy and cultural studies. His talk this afternoon is titled Why Fiction is Not Fake News on As If Truth. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first speaker this afternoon, Mr. Adrian Remodo.
Hello. Hello, thank you, Dr. Apple, for that introduction. And I thank everyone for gracing our occasion. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, Dre.
Hi. Okay, thank you. So while waiting for my presentation to load, okay, so there it is. So again, thank you very much for gracing our occasion, and I also thank the CEC for uh, inviting me to be one of the speakers for this afternoon. So my presentation is titled Why Fiction is Not Fake News on As If Truth. So the motivation behind this paper is quite simple. There is a proliferation of disinformation and fake news, and philosophically and politically speaking, this proliferation of disinformation undermines our capacity for truth. Different researchers have confirmed that many of us find it hard to distinguish what is the truth from what is fake news, and that at least at once we all fell into this quagmire. The social media is the battlefield for the bloody wars on propaganda, lies, deception, state sponsored truth, and the like. Anyone exposed to social media would know that ignorance is no longer a bliss. Our ignorance on what separates reliable information from disinformation costs us our principles, worldviews, and yes, our social and political lives. So the more that we dwell into this disinformation, we think that the effect is something that is external, but actually it affects our whole being, including that of our society. Fake news is not affecting us only externally, it is affecting us internally and intersubjectively. This epistemic debacle falls under the general condition called the truth decay. Kavanaugh and Rich in 2018 define it, the condition truth decay, in terms of four related trends. So these are the four trends of truth decay. First, there is an increasing disagreement about facts and analytical interpretation of facts and data. As you see this rampantly in social media. Okay, we now disagree with facts. We disagree uh, between who has the better explanation. Okay, who we no longer even know what is fact and not a fact, right? So the second trend is that there is a blurring of the line between opinion and facts. Okay, facts are mistaken to be opinions, and opinions, on the other hand, are taken as facts. Okay, hi, thank you for that song. Okay, so third, the third trend is that there is an increasing relative volume and resulting influence of opinion and personal experience over fact. Okay, so established truth, established facts are undermined in favor of personal experience. Okay, sabi ng lolo ko. Okay, all those anecdotal accounts of truth and history are undermined, or I mean, uh, are taken with a higher note rather than those established facts. And the fourth is that there is a declining trust in formerly respected sources of factual information. So, in the age of truth decay, that is our age, opinions proliferate, but the logical acuity declines. Personal narratives take over recorded, verifiable truths. In the age of post fact or post truth, institutions of truth like history, academics, the researchers, the scientists, the experts are rendered as false prophets, while opinion makers and the so called influencers are hailed as standards of rationality. Isn't it true that we now tend to favor the so called influencers over the experts? There is a collapse of the community of experts in today's truth decay, in this ongoing truth decay. However, this paper focuses on another side of the issue. The blurring of the lines between truth and falsity, between valid information and disinformation, has also affected the conceptual boundaries between imagination and falsity, between fiction and fake news. What do I mean by this? Uh, we now we, the, we now confuse imagination with falsity. We now take as if what is imagined is necessarily false, what is fiction is necessarily a fake news. So, this is the motivation behind this presentation for us to salvage these concepts again. And why is that so? Because the effect of combating truth decay is the turn towards understanding the truth as that which is verifiable, documented, produced in laboratory, and backed up by statistics. Of course, it is true. Of course, we need this kind of truth. For example, surviving the pandemic showed us how the meticulous scientific process gave us better leverage in dealing with the virus. Similarly, through evidence, disputes over historical claims are effectively settled, although, of course, these settlements are not necessarily amicable settlements. Science and history, in this context, are both a contest of who has a more decisive evidence. Nevertheless, the positivistic turn to truth has dismissed or at least undermined assertions that do not pass the rigidity of evidentialism and verificationism. In effect, assertions that do not have the quote unquote hard evidences resulting, to, resulting from the scientific method are relegated as fictions or opinions. That's why there are lectures that oppose truth versus fiction as if they are really opposite things. Much worse, there are tendencies where fictions and opinions are now being included within the set of propaganda, disinformation, and fake news. Hence, for this afternoon, I will argue for this too, that fiction is not fake news. So the discussions that will follow will first attempt to salvage the concept of fiction from the false equivalence of fiction and fake news, and second, to evaluate the kind of truth, if ever there is, that fiction unfolds to us. Okay, so that was for my introduction. Let's go to the first part of this presentation, which is the fictive intention. What is fiction? We ask this question not only to define the term, but more importantly, to uncover the proprietary element of the concept, or in your philosophy classes, right? What makes fiction the thing that it is? What is the fictionness of fiction? To answer that, let's take the following case. There is a child playing with her kite. And then she starts telling you a story that she is flying a new type of airplane better than the rest, and the airplane has new shape, dynamics, and can travel with wind energy alone. In her story, she is the pilot, something like the one she saw in the movies. While listening to her, you dismiss the tendency to tell her, no, it's not a plane, it is a kite. And the latest science has not yet proven the feasibility of flying the plane with wind energy alone. Right? So you zip your mouth in order to please the child. Instead, you genuinely cheer her up, yay, telling her how great a pilot she is and that her plane is such a scientific breakthrough. Clearly, the child is engaged in role playing, where her active imagination enables her to see something other than the kite, and she, quote unquote, pretends that she is a pilot. Our question now is, are the utterances, this kite is a plane and I am a pilot, false? If ever they are false, is the child misinformed about the difference between a kite and a plane? Between being a child playing and being a pilot? Is she engaged in falsity, or much worse, is she engaged in fake news? The British philosopher Richard Mark Sainsbury argues that situations such as that allow us to delineate fiction from other epistemic inquiry or literature genre. He argues that what makes a fiction to be what it is, or the essence, the proper character of fiction, is the fictive intention. The fictive utterance, he says, rests on its capacity to induce a make-believe. If so, when someone is engaging in fictive production, he must produce the state of make-believe for its readers. The fictive intention is that the audience and the writers are involved in make-believe. Okay, so this position of make-believe. Okay, so what separates fiction from the rest is this capacity to invite us to enter into a make-believe. Hence, he gives the following condition for the fictive intention. The intention must be that a potential audience, on encountering S in its context, make believe that P. That is the first condition. The second condition is that P should not be true, or if true, true only by accident. So uh, if you encounter S, for example, S, Harry Potter, okay, in its context, you make believe that P. So Harry Potter is a wizard. You make believe that, okay? Now, the second condition is that P should not be true, or if true, true only by accident. Okay, let us further analyze uh, that definition by Sainsbury. So the first condition is that SSP is able to incite a make-believe. Therefore, that the kite is a plane is a make-believe, and not only does the child thinks it so, but you are also engaged in that make-believe. Okay? The second condition is that P should not be true. Now, Sainsbury is making a technical claim on truth here. Truth is understood as that which is happening in the actual state of affairs. Like, for example, today I say, it is not raining today. So the statement, the utterance, today it is not raining, corresponds to an actual state of affairs. That's why I say true. Okay, true, it is not raining today. Or, for example, I mistakenly said, oh, today it is not raining, but when I looked from my window, then I find out that it is raining, then my statement is false. So, if we define a kite as a toy consisting of a light frame with thin material stretched over it, flowed in the wind at the end of the long string, then it is a true statement. But when we say this kite is a plane, of course it is not true in the level or in the context of the actual state of affairs. The third condition is that, oh no, this is still part of the second condition, although we are trying to unpack the conditions. If P is true, then it should only be true by accident. What do we mean by this? Suppose in world Q, in a possible world Q, there is indeed a plane exactly as how the child imagined it. Meaning to say, there is indeed a kite that is a plane. Okay? Then it makes the utterance true, right? But it now becomes an actual state of affairs. But Sainsbury is correct when he said the truth of that statement in world Q is only by accident. In the context of the child, in the world of the child, it is false. So if you satisfy these three uh, characteristics of the fictive intention, then you are involved in a make-believe. And therefore, you are entering the world of fiction. In Sainsbury's argument, the element of make-believe is therefore the essence of fiction. Nevertheless, to make believe is not to pretend. The child is not pretending to fly a kite that is a plane. Hence, fiction is not pretension. Sainsbury argues that liars or pretenders pretend to narrate facts that are false facts. On the other hand, fiction does not intend to assert that what it narrates is factually true in the actual state of affairs, but could only be true accidentally. Okay? So going back to the case given, the child, strictly speaking, is not pretending. She is fictionalizing the kite. How about you from your end as the one looking at the child? Suppose you are not really convinced with the child's make believe, with the child's fiction, but just to avoid hurting her feelings, you cheered her up and went on with her make believe. Sinakayan mo siya. Are you making believe or are you pretending? If you are not genuinely into that moment, when you say, that is a beautiful plane, therefore, you are not fictionalizing, you are pretending to the child. You are lying to the child. You are not in the realm of fiction. Another example can be given. Okay, so that's a scene from my one of my favorite K dramas, Something in the Rain. Okay, a shout out if you also like that series. So while watching a K drama, you become involved in the character's circumstances that you authentically cry with them. Are you pretending that you are hurt when you are crying together with the characters? No. You feel their pain as if you yourself are the one experiencing the heartbreaks. Following Sainsbury, you are not pretending. You are not pretending to be the actor at that moment. You are not lying about the pain. The fictive intention, in that case, efficiently invited you to the world of the character, to the world of the characters, so much so that their pain becomes your real pain. That is the power of the make believe, that is the power of fiction. Thus, Sainsbury gives the following as the make believe rule. So, if the question whether to make believe that P arises, do so if according to the story P. Again, sorry for the K drama references. Okay, so for example, in the hometown cha cha cha, if somebody claims that the chief or Hong Do Sik uh, is a plumber, would you believe that he is a plumber? Of course, he is a plumber. Why? Because according to the story, he is. That's the make believe rule according to Sainsbury. Okay, so I hope it is clear at this point. Now, Sainsbury's explications enable us to separate fiction and fake news at this juncture. While fake news argue that they are offering alternative versions of the narrative, what is actually going on is that they narrate false facts. Fake news and other forms of disinformation are not involved in the production of a make believe, but are engaged in giving a false account of the actual state of affairs. They are not fictionalizing. They are talking about the current state of affairs in a false manner. So, if that is so, they do not induce make believe. They produce belief itself. Now, let me just stay here for a while. When we say belief in epistemology, in philosophy, it's the branch of philosophy that deals with knowledge. Okay, so belief is a disposition towards truth, so that whatever information you receive, it it gives you that it opens the door towards your journey towards the truth. And that's the danger of disinformation. For example, a news reporter sees that the child playing with the kite and hears the utterance, "This is a plane." Then, she reports that a child prodigy has amazingly invented a new kind of airplane. She is narrating it as a fact that invites beliefs. She pretends or lies to assert something as factual, hence deceiving someone to formulate a justified true belief or knowledge. So this information gives you a knowledge about actual state of affairs, while fiction gives you or asserts something that is not in the realm it's not in the um, it's not in the realm of the actual state of affair. Okay. Notice, however, that in the given case, we can always say that the child is imagining that the kite is an airplane. What is the role of imagination in producing a fiction? Sainsbury dismisses imagination as proprietary to fiction. He dismisses it. No, it does not belong to the essence of fiction, according to Sainsbury. His argument goes like this: readers, as well as authors, have to imagine, yes, and have to be imaginative. However, this can be so in production and consumption of nonfiction. So even nonfiction like history, like biography, autobiography, okay, we imagination is involved, and therefore it is not proprietary to fiction alone. That's why Sainsbury dismisses it. Okay, to a certain extent, of course, that is true. Reading a history book needs creative imagination to see what happened in the past. Facts may tell us what happened, but imagination make us relive the event. Okay, but I will leave this point, and I'm going to at this moment, but I'm going to go back to this towards the end of the lecture. I want to respond to Sainsbury towards the end of the lecture. At this point, I want to argue that make believe is part of the essence of fiction. Okay, that make believe as the essence of fiction needs the play of imagination. Okay, so that is my first response to Sainsbury. To establish this claim, I will have a recourse to another philosopher, the French hermeneutic thinker Paul Ricoeur. Ricoeur argues that the imagination restructures our semantic field. It offers a semantic shock. So when we say semantics, it's the sentence, right? It's the meaning that you get from a sentence. Like for example, I say is today is not raining. So it's a semantic, and I get a meaning from that, from the sense and the reference. Okay. So say for example, this kite is an airplane. So so let's take a look at the slide here. So there is this ordinary language or ordinary semantics. When we say ordinary language or ordinary semantics, like for example in the utterance, "this is a kite." In the level of ordinary language, the kite refers to an actual kite. The sense corresponds with the reference. Okay, so it's literal. You can put it that way. It's the literal meaning of the sentence. Okay, so in ordinary language, the sentence is false when we say this kite is an airplane. In ordinary language, of course, it is false. The kite is a kite and the airplane is an airplane. However, imagination augments the notion of reference by pointing us to another of referentiality. We realize that through fiction, sentences can actually refer to different possibilities of referentiality. Fiction has the power to redescribe reality by pointing us to to another order of reference. He argues, therefore, that fiction has a double valence with respect to reference. It is directed elsewhere, even nowhere. But because it designates the non-place in relation to all reality, it can indirectly cite this reality following what I should like to call, recursus, a new reference effect. Okay? So again, let us unpack what Paul Ricoeur is trying to say here. The elsewhere is the locus, the place of fiction. Its references matter in that elsewhere. Hence, by virtue of imagination, the utterance, "this kite is an airplane," refers to something other than the referentiality of ordinary language or ordinary semantics. The reference effect that Ricoeur invokes is the capacity of fiction to produce another order of references. Fiction augments, expands our sense of reality by enabling us to perceive references elsewhere. Imagination is a perception. The power to produce references makes fiction a productive enterprise and not just a reproductive activity. Ricoeur differentiates image in the sense of a portrait and image in the sense of a fiction. An image in the sense of a portrait has the same reference, which is the existing thing. Thus, if I have a picture of Jung Hae-in here in this picture on my phone, I am reproducing the absent reference, which is an actually existing Korean. So the portrait, the picture, always has a truly existing reality, albeit absent reality. The referent of the portrait, the referent here, the actually existing Jung Hae-in, is the real thing aimed at in absentia. Okay? So it is absent, yet, okay, it is absent, but it is made present by the portrait. Okay? So, on the other hand, in case of fiction, so image as a fiction, wait lang, sorry, please excuse me, I got distracted. Okay. Shout out to Kuya Lazada driver. Okay. On the other hand, in the case of image as a fiction, there is no given model in the sense of an original already there to which it could be referred. In this context, we can see fiction as productive of reality in the sense of productive reference. By creating a reality that is true elsewhere, fiction expands our perception and augments our world and our reality. This expansion and augmentation make fiction a productive activity. As Ricoeur says, imagination is productive not only of unreal objects, but also of an expanded vision of reality. Imagination at work, in a work, produces itself as a world. Okay, so fiction creates a world for us. Okay, when you enter the world of fiction, you enter a different world. It's not the ordinary world. It's no longer the world of ordinary semantics. In this context, I argue that Sainsbury's argument for make-believe and Ricoeur's argument for the productive reference need each other to appreciate better what I will call the force of fiction. Okay? So what I am trying to say is that while imagination is also being employed by other genre, by other epistemic activity, imagination should also be at the center of make believe. Okay, contrary to the dismissal of Sainsbury. And why is that so? Because to make believe is to give assent to the reference of fiction. The child playing with her kite, asserting that it is a plane, needs the credence that is rendered possible by make believe. Thus, to make believe is already to assert fictive referentiality. You cannot make believe on something that is not there, that is not produced by fiction. You cannot give an assent to something. You cannot give assent when you do not have a reference. And where does that reference come from? From imagination. In the same way, it is my imagination that the referentiality is opened or produced by fiction. The force of fiction, therefore, is its capacity to refer us to an augmented reality existing elsewhere, and we make believe that it is truly there. Now, an interesting question opens for us at this juncture. What if the elements of make believe and referentiality fail? Like, what if you don't ride on that make believe, although something is claiming that S is P, and you know it is a make believe, and you don't believe in that? What happens? What happens to fiction? Take the following case again. Let's go back to that kite flying. Two children playing kite. One imagines it to be a plane, but the other does not take it, does not accept that proposition, saying to the other child, "Of course, it is not a plane. It is a kite. Can't you see? A plane looks like this. It has the following parts," and so on and so forth. And therefore, your kite is not a plane. O di ba, basag trip, halimbawa. Di ba? Paano kung may basag trip na sinasabi tayo? Is this just a case of bad fiction production? It could be. Both Sainsbury and Paul Ricoeur assert that there indeed is a problem of an unreliable narrator. Ah, May mga may mga fictionist talaga na hindi ganon kagaling, 'di ba? Unreliable, that it makes that they fail to invite us to enter the realm of make believe. A second answer is also possible. The child could resist the fictive referentiality by sticking to the ordinary language reference. In this context, the two children are operating on different semantic fields. It is akin to that kind of friend, di ba? We always have that kind of friend who accompanies you to watch a movie, but would comment every now and then, it could not be possible, right? How can you even believe that? Huh? You can tag that friend, right? Yung bad trip na kasama, yung you feel like crying already, and then you will like, is that even believable? Right? We always have that kind of friend. So in the end, experience of entering the world of fiction fails. The force of fiction is accomplished if one enters the referentiality of fiction. In cases where two peoples operate on different semantic fields, it is not the fiction that fails. It is not fiction itself that fails. It is just that we encounter two languages that do not fuse in the fictive world. And it happens. Now, this theory of reference tells us something very significant about why fiction is not fake news. As we have been repeating already, fiction augments our reality by referring us to an existing being elsewhere. In a way, it liberates us from the dictates of the ordinary language. Such reference effect makes possible that new realities become to us and old worlds are made new. It can be argued, however, that the creative process of imagination still falls under the general theory of mimesis. Okay, that is that the image mimics or copies nature. The classic example would be the centaur, which combines the reality of the human and the reality of a horse. But fictive mimesis is unique in the sense that through its process, the term centaur itself refers to a specific reality to which the terms human and horse no longer refer to. So, at the heart of fictive mimesis is an imagination of the possibilities of the first order or the first order of realities which are residing in the ordinary language. So, again we listen to Ricoeur. He says, the more imagination deviates from that which is called reality in ordinary language vision, the more it approaches the heart of reality, which is no longer the world of manipulable objects, but the world into which we have been thrown by birth and within which we try to orient ourselves by projecting, by imagining our innermost possibilities upon it in order that we dwell there in the strongest sense of the world. If that is so, the character of fiction is never commensurate to fake news, misinformation, and other forms of truth decay. They are simply thwarting referentiality in the ordinary language. When a fake news peddler asserts something, its reference is a willful error. It mimics referentiality, but with the intention to lead its consumers into errors. So going back to Ricker's explanation of the portrait, the Junghei in portrait, as I have used it here, fake news has a different portrait for an existing reality. Okay? So there is already an error there. So you cannot, for example, the actually existing Junghei in, take you cannot take the picture of uh sino ba of any other K-drama or any other Korean actor to replace the reference. No, it cannot be. It's a fake news. And the more that you share it, the more that you spread this information. As Laser et al. Puts it, fake news is fabricated information that mimics news media content in form, but not in organizational process or intent. Fake news outlets, in turn, lacks the news media's editorial norms and processes for ensuring the accuracy and credibility of information. Fake news overlaps with other information disorders, such as misinformation and disinformation. So misinformation is false or misleading information, while disinformation is false information that is purposely spread to deceive people. So, question: what happened? Okay, wait. Can falsity and disinformation happen in the realm of fiction? So I've been talking here about disinformation and falsity in the actual state of affairs. Can falsity and disinformation also happen in the realm of fiction? What do you think? The theory of reference makes us answer yes. Yes, falsity and disinformation can also happen in the realm of fiction. Why? It is false to believe that the child thought of her kite as a supersonic flying car. No, the child does not think of her kite as a car, no matter how sophisticated it could be, right? On the other hand, it is disinformation to spread interpretation despite the evidence that it is false. Now, for the last part of my presentation, I would like to dedicate this last part to what Ricoeur calls as the imaginative variations of reality. Ricoeur believes that life and narrative are closely intertwined with each other. We try to understand and give meaning to the world and to ourselves by implanting different events to form a sensible narrative. Okay? So, for example, why something happens, how it happens, who is involved, when did it happen? All these are fundamental questions that lead us to implot a narrative. Fiction implots and re-implots reality in different ways. Okay? It creates references that, although located elsewhere, efficiently induce new ways of seeing. We see through fiction the imaginative variations of reality. Meaning to say, through fiction, we are offered another possible ways of being, another possible ways of seeing a kite, right? For Ricoeur, furthermore, fictions are not only for literature's sake. It has its social and political functions. By presenting another possibility of reality, we also begin to imagine new possibilities of living. We can just go back to different forms of novels, fictions that inspired revolutions, right? So after reading that fiction, then we try to investigate what kind of life, what kind of society, what kind of politics do we have, and a second speaker would talk later. How does the novel, the fiction, To Kill a Mockingbird reflects our way of living, our society, our very existence, right? In this context, fiction informs reality. So in the previous discussions, in the previous parts, we 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 asserted that reality informs fiction, right? But the same case is true. Fiction also informs reality. Nevertheless, the force of fiction is not only the initiative of the author, it is the power of the text itself to invite the reader into its world. Thus, Ricoeur affirms that reading completes the task of writing. The text achieves its being when someone reads it. The texts are meant to be read. Contrary to the common understanding, however, that to interpret a text is to find a meaning behind it. Our literature teachers are fond of doing this. What do you think is the meaning behind the text? Ricoeur is unique in the sense that when we are interpreting, it is not just to find the meaning behind the text, but to find the meaning in front of the text. How do we find it? By asking, what does the text propose? Okay? So Ricoeur asserts that to interpret is to know the meaning in front of the text. That is the other possible world, the other possible ways of living that the text is proposing. The text does not only hide a meaning, it proposes a meaning. Why is this significant for us? Because by reading fiction, we did not only enjoy a piece of literature. What happens is something more significant. If fiction is a fundamental dimension of the reference of the text, it is equally a fundamental dimension of the subjectivity of the reader. In reading, I unrealize myself, meaning to say, I can imagine by reading, I can imagine other possibilities of existing. I can imagine other ways of living my life. The text tells me there is another possibility. The text tells me if you do this, you will get this, right? That's why the text in the end gives a lesson in the sense that by after reading the text, then you will realize, oh well, that's what, if I do this in the future, it might be possibly true that I will also suffer what the characters had suffered. Okay? The met the met the metamorphosis of the world in play is also the playful metamorphosis of the ego. When I enter that world of fiction, I welcome the place, the imaginative variations of my very self. So, in entering the world of the text, the reader imagines herself as if the character of the very fiction she is reading. In effect, the reader attains a deeper understanding of what it is to be human, both from his or her own experiences and from those that he and or she reads. Thus, it is by means of the imaginative variations of our own ego that we attempt to obtain a narrative understanding of ourselves. Okay? Fiction, fictions do not only produce reality and our capacity to make believe. It invites us to be in the elsewhere as if we are actually dwelling there. The function of fiction in shaping reality lies in its capacity to reimagine the given world. We learn how happy it is to be in love when as if we are part of the romance novel that we are reading, for example. Now, at this point, I want to turn again to Sainsbury when he claimed that imagination is not a necessary property of fiction because even fiction makes use of imagination. Okay? Especially in history, he says. So, okay? But imagination or history is not just a cold narrating of facts. History is not in the enumeration of data, but in imagining as if we are part of that period. Hence, I come to know how bad it is to be a black person in the time of colonialism when I imagine myself precisely as a black man. I understand better the anger and thirst for justice of the victims of dictatorial regimes by entering the world of the text that the historian has created, as if I was there. That is how I understand better what it is to belong in that period. That is how I understand history when as if I, I myself experience the past world. Because as if I encountered those events in history, okay, I learned its lesson and tried to craft a better world in the present and for the future. Perhaps from this lens, we can understand more meaningfully the adage that says that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But if history involves the as if element, does it mean that we fictionalize historiography or the science of writing history, historiography? Of course, historiography has its own rigor. To a large extent, the historian tries to be objective in the way she reconstructs the past through available data. However, Ricker argues that history and fiction cannot be totally separated. They overlap and are interwoven with each other. When the reader consumes a work of history, she reads it as if it were happening in the present. The more she gets involved in the account, in the historical account, as if it is an event going on, the better she understands the past. The as if of fictions gives eyes to the horrified narrator and eyes to see and weep, says Ricker. Let us add there, okay? Let's paraphrase it a bit. So the fiction gives eyes not only to the horrified narrator, but to the horrified reader as well. So fiction is placed in the service of the unforgettable. It permits historiography to live up to the task of memory. What is the task of memory, you may ask? Simple, that there is a duty to remember. And the more that we imagine the past, the more that we live up to that duty to remember. It is at this point that I now conclude my sharing. Thank you for listening. So, to conclude, we see that the richness of fiction is the opposite of the impoverished state of misinformation, fake news, and the lie. When one engages in fake news, she's not engaging in fiction telling. Fiction does not manipulate truth and reality towards error. Fake news does. Fiction augments reality by producing preferentiality elsewhere. Fake news diminishes reality by betraying its reference in a particular time and space. Let it suffice then to say that fiction is not fake news because while the former invents life through creativity, fake news denies it by deception. Hence, our argument, fiction is not fake news. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you gained something from this sharing.
Thank you, Sir Adrian, for an insightful session this afternoon, especially in clarifying the concepts to better understand that fiction is not and will never be fake news. So let us give our resource speaker again a virtual round of applause. Thank you, Sir Adrian. So at this part of the program, we will now be entertaining questions from our participants. We will allot 10 minutes for the open forum. And I encourage everyone to share your thoughts, your insights, your reactions, or questions in the chat box. Feel free to leave your comment via our Zoom, or to those who are participating, our participants through FB Live, you may want to leave a comment in the comment section. Okay, and you may, as you leave your comment, kindly indicate your school affiliation. And of course, you may also want to click the raise hand button to our participants here in our Zoom meeting. Kindly click the raise hand button and unmute your microphone for you to ask your question directly to our resource speaker, Sir Adrian. So do we have any questions? Any questions from our participants? Okay, Sir Adrian, there's a question here from Sir Dom Briones. What did Paul Ricoeur mean when he said that the more imagination deviates from the manipulable objects of reality, the more we approach the heart of reality?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Sir Dre.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Sir Adrian. Go ahead po.
Hi. Hi. Am I coming clear?
Yes, Sir
Can you hear
Adrian.
me?
Yes, Sir Adrian. You can. You may want to answer now the question of Sir.
Okay. When Ricoeur says the more that imagination deviates, okay, we can situate it in Ricoeur's general argument that there is always polyvalence. Okay, there are different meanings to a given reality. Okay. Wait. Naririnig ba ako?
Yes, Sir Adrian. All clear po. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, okay. So the more that according to Paul Ricoeur, the more they imagine the possibilities of
Hello, Sir Adrian.
what is real, or when the world is trying to yeah, hello.
Hello, sir. Medyo napuputol ka po, sir.
Okay.
Hello, Sir Adrian.
Hello. Hello.
Yes po. You can continue now, Sir Dre. Sorry.
Uh, wait.
Sir?
Hello.
Yes po. We can hear you now, sir. Okay na po.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back, Sir Dre.
Or
Go
choppy pa
ahead.
rin?
Okay na po, sir.
Okay. Okay. I see my okay na?
Yes, Sir Dre. We can
Or
hear you
go to
now.
the first, like, the designs of rules.
We can hear you now, sir. Sige po.
Okay. So the question was, what does Paul Ricoeur mean when he said that more imagination deviates from manipulable objects, the more that we enter into the heart of reality? That was the question.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
So they asked, uh, you talk to me every now and then, so I can check whether I am I'm clear. Yeah, okay. Dom, is that your question, Dom?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay. So um, we have to take it from Ricoeur's more general argument that okay, meaning is always multi-layered. Okay? There's no single meaning to reality. Contrary to some positivistic philosophies that okay, there is this one-on-one correspondence between the term and its meaning. Okay, to the term and its meaning. Ricoeur generally argues that a term can have its multiple meanings. Okay, and how do we uncover those multiple meanings? It is in the sense that Paul Ricoeur says the more imagination deviates from this ordinary uh, the ordinary ascription of meaning, the more that we can imagine better, okay, the more that we can see better what are other possible meanings of that particular reality. And in that way, according to Paul Ricoeur, the more that we see this polyvalence of meaning, the more we see reality better, the more that we see reality in a better light. Yeah, that's my simple answer to that. No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Adrian, for your response. Sir Dre, there's another
Thank you for
question. There's another question from one of our participants in the Facebook Live from Sir Edward Landoy. The question here is, if you go to Wattpad and AO3, you'll find a number of Reader X Sandro Marcos fan fictions to further produce Marcos revisionism. What happens to fiction when it becomes a tool to spread misinformation or fake news? Were you able to get that, Sir Dre?
Yes, yes. Hi, Edward. Long time. Okay. First, I will affirm what Edward has just said. Fictions, just like anything, can be a tool. Okay, can be a tool of of any politics, right? In that sense, in the question of Edward, it can be a tool of the Marcos narrative. Okay, so what happens? What happens if the narrative itself becomes a tool for disinformation, a tool for fake news? Very valid question, right? That's why we go back to that notion of the unreliable narrator. Okay? We go back to that unreliable narrator again. We have to what? We have to we have to investigate the kind of implotment, the kind of plot that the narrator gives. Of course, you can argue, well, it is fiction, it is elsewhere, right? So, but although it is fiction, you are not uh, you are not free, so to speak, to implement things the way you do, because uh, we go back again to the interweaving of history and fiction. That was one of my last slides towards the end, right? But in other cases where fiction, okay, directly mimics history, okay, the narrator, the 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 producer of fiction has to respect some things about history. Well, history uh, needs fiction to imagine how the past uh, has been. Fiction, on the other hand, needs history, okay, in order that its claim, its plots, its events, okay, are not are not erroneous, quote unquote erroneous, okay, lest it becomes a problem of the unreliable narrator. Okay, so so that's why on the part of the reader, okay, remember that fiction or any written text that sense in that sense is not only is not a one-way street. Okay, while the narrator can imply many possible things from the point of view of the reader, okay, things will fall or things cannot just be a make believe. Okay, it can pass the make believe because you know that it directly mimics the past form in that case. Thus, according to Paul Ricoeur, there is the interweaving of history and fiction.
Thank you, Sir Dre. Do we have other questions from our dear participants? You may also want to unmute your microphone and tick that button in our Zoom, raise hand button, so you could directly ask questions or share your thoughts, reactions about this talk. Any other questions from our participants? Let us first check the FB Live if there are other questions here. Okay, so since there are no more questions, we now proceed to the awarding of or presentation of
I see
certificate.
Apple, there is a question.
There's a question. Sorry. Okay, let me.
From Ma'am Sheila.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes po. Go, Ma'am Sheila.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a direct message. That's why you're able to see it. But I
Sorry.
think this is a good question. It's a good question. So let me just read it. Okay.
You may just
So
want
I'd
to
like to
read,
ask
sir.
this question. Okay. So when the source claims to use elements of fiction in an enunciation, are they therefore creators of fiction, not fake news? And does this claim absolve them from being tagged as purveyors of fake news? Okay. Just like anything else, intention is one of the most difficult things to prove, right? But as how I answered Edward from the former question, when fiction greatly and directly mimics or copies history, you know for sure okay how the fiction can be a tool of disinformation, right? That's why that's why we should always challenge the narrator. Okay, we should always challenge the narrator, not only in the sense of history as a science, okay, but in the terms of history meme or presenting itself as fiction. We have to challenge the narrators. There, it must be, if anything, the very least that we can do is that to put the plot under the state of conflicts of interpretation. Okay, in the hermeneutical situation of the conflict of interpretation.
Okay. Thank you again, Sir Adrian. So, any other questions from our participants? Okay, so we now proceed to the presentation of a certificate to our resource speaker. So let me read the citation here. Creative Endeavor Council Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Sir Adrian V. Remodo in grateful appreciation of his valuable contribution as resource speaker during the Literature Month webinar with the title Literature, Fiction, and Truth-Telling Amid Online Misinformation held on April 22, 2022 at the Ateneo de Naga University, Naga City. Given this 22nd day of April 2022 at the Ateneo de Naga University, Naga City, signed by Dr. Margarita Fajardo, Reyes Dean, and signed by Mr. Joseph Reboriano, CEC Chair. Again, congratulations and thank you very much for your insightful presentation, Sir Adrian Remodo. A round of applause again to our first resource speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope you learn. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, we still have other the second part, okay, in which another speaker will be discussing to us another interesting topic on fake news. So we now proceed to the second part of our session. Let me now introduce our second speaker. Our second speaker is an assistant professor at the Department of Literature and Language Studies at Ateneo de Naga University, where she finished her degree on Bachelor of Arts in English cum laude and her master's degree in Language and Literature. She is currently pursuing her degree on Doctor of Philosophy in Literature at the University of Santo Tomas. She was a drama fellow in the 2020 UST National Writers Workshop. Her creative works have appeared in Bukambibig and Rimpo's literary folio, and her plays have been staged in Naga City and Albay. Her scholarly articles are published in Asia Social Issues, Advanced Science Letters, and the International Journal of Communication and Linguistic Studies. Her research interests include Bicol fiction, Bicol drama, and post-colonial feminism. And she is also currently the unit head of Creative Endeavors Council for Theater. This afternoon, she will talk about truth in fiction, what it means to kill a mockingbird. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Elsie Albis.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll just share my screen. Good day, everybody. Thank you, Ma'am Apple, for the introduction. I hope you could hear me. And thank you all for spending some time with us today and for choosing to participate in my lecture titled Truth in Fiction, What It Means to Kill a Mockingbird. By the way, in case you have any question or anything to add, anything to clarify about my talk, feel free to type them or ask them during the open forum. So for this presentation, I hope to discuss the following. First, power play. It's a truth in Harper Lee's novel. Under this category, I wish to discuss the following. One, interpersonal domain of power. And second, the disciplinary domain of power. And third, the cultural domain of power. And last, the structural domain of power. The second part of my lecture delves into the mockingbirds in the novel and why is it a sin to kill them. And under this category, we have the following. First, Peekaboo, a surprising truth. Second, Tom Robinson, robbed of truth. And last, Scout Finch, scouting for truth. I will be using the concept of intersectionality as an analytic tool in discussing the first part of my lecture under power play. Now, why of all the novels out there, we have Filipino novels and many Afro-Asian novels, why did I choose to discuss To Kill a Mockingbird? Why talk about this? Well, one reason is it is the favorite book of Vice President Leni Robredo. After sharing that it is her favorite novel, it has gone viral. It trended on Twitter. People talk about it both negatively and positively, as you can see in these screenshots. On the left side, you can see a negative comment saying that the book is about animal cruelty, while on the right side, it is a response to the said post arguing that the book is about racial prejudice. It is bothering that some people would mock this classic and iconic novel and set aside what made this a gem of American literature. These reactions from netizens are alarming. And as a literature teacher, I think that I have to do something because people would claim a lot of things even without really knowing what the book is really all about. Hence, I accepted this lecture to discuss this great novel of Harper Lee, which exposes the cruelty, yes, cruelty, but not about animal cruelty, but the cruelty of human nature, which we have to avoid. And actually, because of this cruelty that the novel contains, some schools in the United States have even banned this great work and are withdrawing it from the school curriculum, as you can see from these news articles. District Committee criticizes the book's language and says the way it handles race issues is problematic. Another news article says one of America's most famous following. You can read them. Sends social-political criticisms and insights regarding the treatment of women, of people of color, and of the poor in the American South during the Great Depression. Just a background, the Great Depression is an economic downturn that started in the United States in 1929, which then spread to other countries in the world that ended in 1939. This economic decline is characterized by mass unemployment, banking panics, high poverty, and homelessness rates. Despite being written 6 decades ago and setting the story at the aftermath of Great Depression, the themes and the political and moral insights of this novel still ring true in today's society. Now let's get into these truths being offered by this novel. Harper Lee's novel that was published in 1960 takes place in the fictional town of Macomb in Alabama in the late 1930s, at the aftermath of the Great Depression. The story is in the point of view of John Lewis Finch, ages from 6 to 9 during the course of the novel. She grows up with her brother Jeremy, or Jem, and they are raised alone by their father, Atticus. Atticus is a highly principled lawyer who encourages his children to be empathetic and just. Atticus serves as the lawyer of Tom Robinson, who is falsely accused of raping Mayela Ewell. Mayela Ewell is a teenage white girl Tom has innocently befriended. Later on, Tom is convicted and is killed while trying to escape. To better understand and analyze the novel, I will use intersectionality, particularly the framework of domains of power. And under this analytic tool, we will discuss the interlocking factors that affect the power relations in the story or the power play in the story. And according to Patricia Hale Collins and Sirma Bilge, 2016, intersectionality is a way of understanding and analyzing the complexity in the world, in people, and in human experiences. The events and conditions of social and political in the self can seldom be understood as shaped by one factor. They are generally shaped by many factors in diverse and mutually influencing ways. Now let's get into these factors. What are these factors that influence how we interact with other people, how we live? So these categories are structural, disciplinary, cultural, and interpersonal. These are the domains of power that operate singularly and in combination in shaping the organization of power play. So the first domain is the interpersonal domain of power. According to Bilge and Collins, it refers to how people relate to one another and who is advantaged or disadvantaged within social interactions, particularly those who communicate between dominant and non-dominant groups. It also refers to how our individual consciousness perpetuates the subordination of others. Rebecca Best 2009, in her article, she discusses one of the central themes in To Kill a Mockingbird. According to her, it is the quest to understand the relationships among people and groups of people. I will borrow the concept of that illustrate this notion. We can say that the non-dominant group as the other. So under this domain of power, we will look into how the members of the dominant group interact with the members of the non-dominant group, or simply the others. Or in other words, how our individual consciousness or those who belong to the dominant group perpetuates the subordination of the others. When we say the others, Best refers to them as those who contrast oneself. Both Jem and Scout find their position in society by learning to identify with the others or the members of the non-dominant group. They learn what the society expects them to be through the behavior of those who belong to their own class, which is the dominant group, such as Atticus, their father, their neighbors, Miss Modi and Miss Dubose, their relatives, Uncle Jack and Aunt Alexandra. By the way, these pictures were taken from the film, same title, To Kill a Mockingbird, which was produced in 1962. And they also learn from their interaction with the others or the non-dominant groups such as Tom Robinson, the Cunninghams, the Calpurnia, Boo Radley, and the Ewells. Scout and Gem attempt to understand their position in the society by understanding the ways in which they and their family are not or are different. For instance, their experiences with Calpurnia and the way their neighbors relate or treat Black people or the Black servants, and their reactions to Bob Ewell's accusation of Tom Robinson raping his daughter, Scout and Gem learn about the disadvantaged position of the Black people and that they belong to the lower class, that they are the others. On the one hand, Gem and Scout belong to the several generations of gentle breeding. They belong to the upper class. The children learn that they are in advantaged position or they are part of the dominant group with Atticus or the Finchas family, Aunt Alexandra, Uncle Jack, Miss Modi and Miss Dubose, and their other close neighbors, the white community. But the social position of these characters cannot only be determined by race and class alone. Using intersectionality, the children also learn that this class is also divided into subsection of gender. Scout Finch, who is advantaged because she is white, learns that her gender, being a girl, puts her in a disadvantaged position. And Miss Modi and Miss Dobus are also in a disadvantaged position because of their gender. No women, in fact, are allowed to be part of the jury, for instance, no matter how qualified they are, because they are simply women. This is in 1930s during the Great Depression. Now the Cunninghams. Being white places them in the dominant group. However, their class or socioeconomic status, which is being poor, puts them in a disadvantaged position, despite being honest and hardworking country folks. Scout learns from Aunt Alexandra that the Cunninghams are not our kind of folks. Later, you will learn more about this. Similarly, the Ewells are white, but they are in a more disadvantaged position because of their financial status and lifestyle, which people find in the novel, they use the term dirty. They are more poor compared to the Cunninghams, and the novel shows how poor they are by allowing them to hunt even during out of season and lets the kids attend only the first day of classes. Atticus tells Scout that the Ewells were people, but they lived like animals. And Scout's first grade teacher expresses sheer horror at finding cookies or lice on Bury's Ewell. Scout then learns that the Ewells, with their dirty and trashy ways, are being looked down upon. And moreover, under this domain, power persists by being in your natural place. So the oppression is there if you stay in your natural place, as what society expects you to be. In case a member of a particular group reaches out to a member of another social group, he or she will be pushed out of the system altogether or deal with harshly within the system. This happened to Boo Radley, who avoids society. Since he avoids society, people misunderstood him. And also to Dolphus Raymond, who has biracial children and loves to spend time with people of color. So people look down upon him. And to Calpurnia, he brought the children to the First Purchase Church, which angered Lula. And if you've read the novel. And of course, to Atticus Finch, who is a highly respected lawyer, a white man, hence his advantaged position. However, when he reaches out to the Black community by being the lawyer of Tom Robinson, he and his children were subjected to ridicule and harassment by their peers, by their white peers, and by adults, just because he chose to defend a Black person. They were angry flocking birds for Atticus' defense of Tom, the white community. And in general, those who challenge and defy the status quo and the rules face criticism from their peers and friends and even relatives. On the one hand, the other characters who, such as Miss Dubose, Lula, and Aunt Alexandra, are those who reinforce the rules and social norms. And despite the social inequality that this system brings upon, these people still find the system valuable and worthy to be preserved. These rules and those who reinforce these rules are connected to the next domain of power, which is the disciplinary. But before I get into that, let me just share with you that empowerment in this domain, in interpersonal domain of power, can be achieved through taking conscious actions that empower individuals, rather than using your position, one's position, and knowledge to exploit, commodify, or objectify members of marginalized groups. Take, for instance, this famous couple now on social media. Many people find the said appreciation post, if you've encountered it, nakakakilig and sana all moment. However, some readers, that include me, find the post a bit off, exposing the husband's selfishness, just talking about his achievements, misogynistic attitude or tendency, in which he glorifies himself while dismissing the voice of the wife, the other. Again, some won't agree to this kind of reading. I understand, because for them, it was the wife's choice out of love to serve her family. Okay, that's a noble path which I respect. But given my knowledge of women's plight for equality, I am critical about anything which I think are potential signs of women's oppression. Hence, I am glad that people have been engaged in a discourse, in a conversation about this post. We made the husband aware or conscious of the signs of misogyny, which he may or may not be aware of. It's actually a good sign for our generation, because many in our times are already being critical and conscious of our positions in the society. Kaya boys, be careful. We women are watching after our sisters. Let's proceed to the next domain of power, which is the disciplinary. According to Collins and Bilge, it refers to how different people find themselves encountering different treatment regarding which rules apply to them and how those rules will be implemented. In other words, this refers to how different people are given different opportunities and rules to live by. And Maycomb is penetrated with disciplinary mechanisms in which there are strict class, race, and gender boundaries. Parang act according to your natural place, or rules. One social position, if you are dominant or non-dominant, mandates proper behavior. According to Best 2009, Maycomb's disciplinary mechanisms include both the devices of physical torture, if you're familiar with lynch mobs, and in the novel, stacked juries for Blacks particularly, and of social ostracism for Black and white. Other forms of disciplinary mechanisms in Maycomb society or in American South in general, because we say, diba, Maycomb is just a reference to American South. It's just a small picture, but it already speaks a lot about the bigger picture, which is the American South. So the mechanisms include the following: white men acquitted of rape, given a free pass. extremely lighter sentences compared to Black men. Take this for example. Black woman let her child play in the park next to where she worked. This is the image of the media circulated, her mugshot. White man raped an unconscious woman in an alley behind a dumpster. This is the image of the media is circulating. So these are subtle forms. I don't know if you can call these subtle forms of allowing oppression to penetrate our society. Bias for the white man, prejudice against the Black man or the Black woman. Another one is men of color are convicted or worse, killed without due process or proper trial. If you're familiar with lynching as part of American history, Black people are convicted or killed without due process. In the Philippines, we also have that, extrajudicial killings. Halos lahat na mukhang kriminal, drug addict. So ganun, those are our biases, our prejudices that affect how we relate with other people. Another disciplinary mechanism is women being exploited by white men. And people of color are given different rules to live by. During the Great Depression, the Black people suffered from an employment rate 2 to 3 times than that of whites. And they received substantially less aid than whites. So that's the sad part. Racism in 1930s American South continued to persist despite the abolition of slavery and rights for colored people have started to arise. People won't let go yet of their old habits and traditions. This is depicted when Tom is convicted despite the truth that he is not guilty. The jury and the rest of the white society are highly influenced by their prejudice that they couldn't convict or worse, kill people without due process or consideration. Moreover, are you familiar with Tim Johnson, the mad dog in the novel? For those who've read the novel, the mad dog with rabies symbolizes this tendency of the Macomb society for mob mentality. But before I get into that, I have a question. Were you surprised to read that Atticus shot this mad dog? Why would Atticus do a cruel thing such as shooting a dog, right? Maybe we can talk about that during the Q&A portion. But for now, this act symbolizes the Macon society, the way they treat the mad dog by bolting their doors and just watching the scene without doing anything else, but just being passive viewers. And Atticus is only the only one who bravely steps up and deals with the dog. The town finds anything that is different from them, the other. Iba ang kulay mo, iba ang gender mo, other ka. Iba ang social status mo, hindi ka belong. So mob mentality. So ano yung uso for the dominant group, dun tayo. So the town finds anything that is different from them, the other, and illustrating the problem of prejudice. And nobody can deal with this problem. Atticus steps up and deals with this dog, with this problem. And how did he deal with the problem of prejudice? He defended Tom Robinson. And interestingly, the name Tim Johnson sounds similar to Tim Robinson. It cannot be arbitrary. Have you encountered a dog who was named Tim Johnson? Usually named dog as Whitey, Brownie, right? But Tim Johnson, it cannot be again arbitrary because this could mean that Atticus steps up and helps Tom in his trial, emphasizing the point of the novel about fair treatment of people regardless of their race, class, and gender. And of course, we can infer more about this, but just we can go back to this later during the Q&A. And now let's get into the other forms of prejudice as a result of the rules that the mad society of Macomb reinforces. An example of prejudice for one social class is the case of Walter Cunningham Jr., the classmate of Scout Finch, who faces discrimination for his family's financial status, which has been greatly affected by the Great Depression. Scout Finch could not freely play with William because of their difference in status. says Scout. But I wanna play with Walter, Auntie. Why can't it? She took off her glasses and stared at me. I'll tell you why. Because he is trash. That's why you can't play with him. And Walter Cunningham has also hookworms. Cunningham's face told everybody in the first grade he had hookworms. His absence of shoes told us how he got them. He has also no food for lunch. Here's a quarter, she said to Walter. The she here is the teacher of Walter. Go and eat downtown today. You can pay me back tomorrow. And it has been revealed that they don't have much to pay. They don't have much, but they go along in it. Atticus also comments that the Cunninghams are country folks, farmers, and the crash hit them hardest. It is revealed in this scene by Scout the financial situation of the Cunninghams. They don't have much money, not for food, not for shoes. And people look down upon them. Scout cannot play with Walter no matter how she wants to play with him. Yeah. And aside from race, gender roles are also explored in the novel. Rights for women are still new during that time. In fact, women's suffrage only became a law in 1920. In being a girl, Scout Finch wishes to be treated the same way as Jem and not be seen as weak for being a girl. Unfortunately, because of her experience, Scout already resents being called a girl. I was not sure, but Jem told me if I was being a girl, that girls always imagine things. That's why other people hated them. So, and if I started behaving like one, I could just go off and find some to play with. As a young girl, Scout is also expected to wear dresses and act like what other normal girls will do. Aunt Alexandra is actually very determined to decimate Scout's tomboy tendencies. Harper Lee is exposing in her novel how society pushes upon little girls the societal expectations of being a woman. And in another scene, she comments, I felt the starch walls of a pink cotton penitentiary closing in on me. And for the second time in my life, I thought of running away immediately. In this scene, you can see how Scout finds girlhood as a prison that suffocates her. Her brother Jem also adds to this notion about girl. Jem says, I swear, Scout, sometimes you act so much like a girl, it's mortifying. Another scene which reveals the limitations of women is when Jem questions why the good people, like Miss Maudie, are not part of the jury that convicted Tom. Atticus tells Jem that she could not because she is a woman. In American South, women, regardless of your color, suffer from inequality. In this game of kids, we could already see how society sets the limited roles for women. Jem parsed out our roles. I was Mrs. Radley, and all I had to do was come out and sweep the porch. And another line from Scout, boys don't cook. I giggled at the thought of Jem in an apron. All in all, these scenes reveal how young girls are restricted and taught by the society about the freedom and superiority of men. The poor, the women, and the blacks are treated as less superior, not for who they truly are, but because of prejudice. Power in this context operates by disciplining people in ways that favor the dominant group while the others are not. The Black people, despite being in America, are not enjoying the same treatment with nor rights with other white Americans because of their race and class, and worse, their gender. Imagine being born Black and imagine being born a Black woman. The sexist and racist attitude of the Macomb society allows all social inequality in their community to thrive. Are we also gonna let these causes of social inequality and social divisions to thrive in our own nation? Now, what causes all these divisions? The next domino power has an answer to it. Ideas. Our ideas can cause oppression. The cultural domain of power underscores the value of ideas in providing social equality and fair play. It focuses on how messages are manufactured to create the illusion that there are no inequities between different identities. It refers to the system of ideas developed by a dominant group that justifies their practices. It answers the questions: why do some people win and other people lose? And why do some people consistently win and others consistently lose? These are the messages that create the illusion that there are no social divisions and inequalities. These are just examples of ideas that create such illusion. One, people of color are prone to violence. That's why they deserved to be hanged or killed. Women are now equal to men. So forget feminism. Hindi na uso. Tapos na, nagboboto na kayo, may mga trabaho na kayo mga babae, malaya na kayo. So bakit pa ipaglalaban ang feminista? Okay. And the idea of guilty until proven innocent. Do you have other examples of ideas or messages that create the illusion that there are already no social divisions and inequalities, that the world is already fair? And the bad thing about this is that the beliefs of the dominant group get normalized. How? Members of non-dominant groups might endorse the ideas of the dominant group. Schools, churches, community organizations, families, and mass media perpetuate these ideas, these ideologies, and now social media. In the novel, these lines reflect how family perpetuates racial prejudice. My folks said your daddy was a disgrace and that nigga to hang from the water tank. That's what I said. Grandma says it's bad enough he lets you all run wild, but now it's turned out a nigga lover will never be able to walk the streets of Mekong again. He's running in the family and that's what he's doing. So Cecil Jacobs here and Francis, the cousin of Scout and Jeremy, are highly influenced by their respective families. So the ideas of the families influence the ideas of these children. And not only children, but the adults as well, such as Miss Dubose. According to Miss Dubose, yes, indeed, what is this word come to when a finch goes against his racing or goes against his natural place? I'll tell you, she put her hand to her mouth. When she drew it away, it trailed a long silver thread of saliva. Your fathers know better than the niggers and trash he works for. I'm kind of hesitant to pronounce this because who am I, right? And in the case of Bob Ewell, he is white, therefore he is favored compared to Tom. Given that his full name is Robert E. Lee Ewell, named after the officer Richard Ewell and the general who commanded the Confederate Army, Robert Lee, who represented the South, the Southern slave states and their right to expand slavery, reinforced Bob Ewell's racial prejudice against Tom Robinson or against the people of color. He also holds higher status because he is a white man after all, albeit he lacks education and money. He could not fathom his daughter engaging in an intimate relationship with a black man. Again, we can see here in this domain of power the importance of our ideas. Our ideas must be well informed in order for us to see and combat prejudice that is ingrained in our society. Empowerment under this domain of power can be attained through valuing and choosing one's conscience or self-definition over societal definitions about one's personhood. And to quote Atticus Finch, the one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience. It will serve as your guide as to how you will decide or act about certain matters. Listen to your conscience. For us Filipinos, it can be generating ideas that allow us to understand and embrace our identities, and by being critical of the social mores of our society, because not everything that is considered as acceptable by the society is entirely correct. We can see that in the next domain of power, which is structural. The structural domain of power shows the following. It shows how the intersecting power relations of class, gender, and race shape the institutionalization and organization of the domain of power. It examines how societal and in society. In the novel, the white people, the upper class, and the men are those who institutionalize and organize the domain of power. Internalized and institutional make it all difficult for us to attain a level playing field or equality or fairness. As what Atticus has told Scout and Jem, there's something in our world that makes men lose their heads. They couldn't be fair if they tried. In our courts, when it's a white man's word against a black man's, the white man always wins. They're ugly, but those are the facts of life. The court scene in the novel, the trial scene, is supposed to be the story's metaphor of a level playing field. The court scene or the court should be a place for fairness, right? It is an important venue for seeing how things should be. The backgrounds of the defendant, the witnesses, the lawyers, the jury, etc., should not matter inside the court. What matters in the courtroom is the truth. The rules of fair play must be implemented. But why is it in the novel the innocent Tom Robinson is convicted? Atticus Finch, the good lawyer, has brilliantly defended Tom Robinson during the pivotal and highly anticipated moment in the novel, which is the trial scene. If you're going to read this passage, you will see how Atticus brilliantly defended Tom. Let's read it. There is one human institution that makes a pauper the equal of a Rockefeller, the stupid man the equal of an Einstein, and the ignorant man the equal of any college president. That institution, gentlemen, is a court. It can be the Supreme Court of the United States or the humblest JP court in the land or this honorable court which you serve. Our courts have their faults, as does any human institution. But in this country, our courts are the great levelers. And in our courts, all men are created equal. The all-male jury is supposed to help combat the internalized prejudice of the community against the powerless. However, they could not also get away from its chain. Sadly, they also take part in fossilizing the roots of many societal issues or the heart of corruption that confronts Macon society. Atticus Finch continued, I'm no idealist to believe firmly in the integrity of our courts and in the jury system. That is no ideal to me. It is a living, working reality. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me on this jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. I am confident that you, gentlemen, will review without passion the evidence that you have heard, come to a decision, and restore this defendant to his family. And in the name of God, do your duty. How can we empower the minorities? Through the structural domain of power. The social institutions must be transformed. How? I don't know, but they must provide fair playing field for everyone regardless of socio-economic status, gender, and race. Actually, I have an idea. It's education. Education will help a lot transform our ideas. And continue using intersectionality as an analytic tool, I was able to show how social inequality is indeed not only caused by a single factor, but rather as a result of interactions among various categories. Class exploitations, racism, and sexism are not standalone issues. They are interlocking, mutually constructing, and intersecting. And to end the first part of my lecture, I would like to emphasize that all these domains of power are significant in understanding power relations. Although I admit it is difficult to cover them all and to provide plenty of examples to illustrate my point. But I hope that through the analysis, the discussion, you're able to see the roots of social injustices and inequality, which Harper Lee explored in her novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Now let's proceed to the second part of this lecture, the mockingbirds and why is it a sin to kill a mockingbird. The netizens are right. To kill a mockingbird is indeed cruel. Hence, they out for us. Mockingbirds are harmless. How
Hi, Ma'am Elsie. Are you still there? Okay, we
I'm
wait.
muted. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Ma'am El. Sorry for that. You may want to continue.
Did I lose my connection?
Yeah. All clear na po. You can proceed again, Ma'am Elsie. Thank you. You're on
Your
mute, ma'am.
screen is no longer you're no longer shared, and you are on mute, Ma'am Elsie.
Okay. So I think I have to share my screen again. One moment. Share. I'll just share my screen. Okay. So I'm back. I didn't know what happened, but I'm back. Sige. So where am I? I was discussing that the mockingbirds represent those whose intentions are pure and sincere. I'll just minimize the
Hello, Ma'am Els. Perhaps Ma'am Elsie is having internet connectivity problem.
because he is
Okay, there is connectivity problem experienced by one of our speakers. So while we are waiting for Ma'am Elsie to rejoin our session, let me again remind everybody of our webinar guidelines. So to our participants, these are again our guidelines. For registered participants, kindly use your full name and affiliation on your Zoom if you're participating through our Zoom. For ADNO students, kindly indicate your subject code and your section. Okay, also write your comments and questions in the in-call messages. Questions on microphones will be accommodated during the open forum. Just have to simply click the raise hand button. And finally, the e-certificates will be issued to those who have registered, to those who have completed the sessions and filled out the evaluation form. So do we have Ma'am Elsie here now? Parang wala pa. So again, while we're waiting for Ma'am Elsie, there is a question here from one of the participants through FB Live, Ma'am Sheena Haushan. And I think this can be directed to actually both resource speakers. Sir Dre, would you like to answer to Ma'am Sheena's question? Are you there, Sir Adrian?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm here, but Elsie's back.
Okay. Ma'am
I'm really
Elsie,
sorry. I don't know that.
I think there really is a problem, internet connectivity problem in Naga City, and I'm glad I'm not there at the moment. So, Ma'am Elsie, are we all good? Hi, Ma'am Els. Hi, Sir Dre.
Hi.
Oh, hello. How are you?
We're still
Yeah.
waiting.
Okay. We still have
But
time.
So,
we still have
ladies and
time,
gentlemen,
definitely.
this is just a proof that, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a proof that we are doing this live.
Yes.
Yeah. But why can't I share my screen? The host disabled
Okay,
participant.
yeah. So Elsie's trying to
share
share
the
her
screen.
screen now.
Okay, please allow me to share my screen.
Organizer, the tech team, can you please unshare our
How's
PowerPoint?
how's everyone?
I hope they're still here. Well, Ma'am Elsie, they are still here. We still have 58 or 60 participants in Zoom and several participants via Facebook Live. So thank you still for patiently waiting.
Yes, thank you for waiting. Let me just reshare my screen.
I think, Ma'am Elsie, we're all good. You can now share your screen. Okay na ba?
Yeah, I'm trying. Okay, share. So it's under Zoom. Wait. Yeah, I'm back. Let's continue. So where am I? I think I'm discussing Burati, right? I'm saying that it's the first mockingbird and he is mysterious, isolated, locked up away from the neighborhood. And this passage illustrates the myths around him and how the neighborhood perceives Buradi. Inside the house lived a malevolent phantom. People said he existed, but Jem and I had never seen him. People said he went out at night when the moon was down and peeped in windows. When people's azaleas froze in a cold snap, it was because he had bidden on them. Any stealthy small crimes committed in Macomb were his work. This passage illustrates how the neighborhood shares a lot of rumors or myths about him. If you can see, Scout keeps on saying, people said, people said, people said. So these are rumors, hearsays. And another rumor about Buradli is that he is a vicious mongoloid. It is revealed at the end of the story that he is not actually a ghost. He is not a phantom. He is not a monster. He is not someone you must be afraid of. He may be feared and ostracized for his unusual behavior and life choice, but peekaboo, here's the surprising truth. Boo reveals himself at the end of the story that he is actually a very compassionate person who cares for the children, Jem and Scout. If you've read the novel, when these two are on their way home from the Halloween event at school with Scout still dressed in her ham costume, they are suddenly chased and attacked in the dark by Bob Ewell, the one who accused Tom Robinson of raping his daughter. Boo loudly out of nowhere comes and saves Scout from Bob Ewell. Now, what makes Boo Radley a mockingbird? because just like the songbirds, all he does is watch the neighborhoods, leave presents to gem and scout at the tree, and he also protects them during the said attack. When Bob Ewell accidentally died during the said attack, Boo is supposed to be arrested. But like killing a mockingbird, Atticus understands the innocence of Boo Radley. He never harmed Bob Ewell. It was an accident. What killed him is an accident. In case Atticus allows Boo to be arrested, what justice would it serve? What benefit lies in there? Now, moreover, Boo Radley's decision to be isolated from the society, as Jem realizes, is rooted from his rejection of the Macon social mores and rules which are filled of prejudices. He stays away from mob mentality. He chooses his own lifestyle. He doesn't want to conform to the norms. And this novel also explores how destructive baseless accusations or hearsays and myths when left unchecked to a mockingbird, to an innocent being. So spreading myths, rumors is like killing a mockingbird. Again, his story reveals how ignorance leads to unfounded fear and how lack of empathy can lead to prejudice on how we about bias against other people whose life choices are harmless and different are harmless but are different from the rest of the populace can already be likened to killing a mockingbird. And I just want to share this because I'd like you to sing. I'm convicted by you because your hair says toxic. And I love rumors. They told me so much about myself I didn't even know about. In social media, we can see a lot of this against certain presidential candidates. And the second mockingbird is Tom Robinson. His name is actually can be attributed to a migratory songbird. But now why is he robbed of truth? In the novel, he has visited Mayela Ewell a few times with the intention of helping her attend to the house chores. But one time, she forcibly touched Tom. And when her father sees it, the father, Bob Ewell, falsely accuses Tom of raping his daughter. The townspeople, without knowing the actual truth, believed the said narrative of Bob Ewell because of prejudice. The townspeople would rather believe the said lie than admitting the fact that a woman of their kind would engage in an intimate relationship with a black man. During the trial, Mayela comes really close to admitting that Mr. Ewell, her father, is physically abusing her, but she refused to change her testimony to escape the fact that she broke a very important code of a white woman, tempting a black man. Tom then is robbed of truth. He is robbed of freedom. He is robbed of a decent life with his loved ones. And according to Scout, Tom Robinson lives in that little settlement beyond the town dump. He's a member of Calpurnia's church, and Cal knows his family well. She says they're clean living folks, Scout. You aren't old enough to understand some things yet, but there's been some high talk around town to the effect that I should not do much about defending this man. But like Boo Radley, Tom is innocent, but he is not respected and protected because of prejudice. He faced a tragic fate despite being morally just and being sincere and innocent. We can argue that Tom's story shows how fear of truth on the part of Mayela Ewell and choosing instead to believe a lie to exonerate oneself can be likened to killing a mockingbird. The third mockingbird, but not the last, is Scout Finch. Interestingly, her family name, Finch, has some connections to mockingbirds, the small-looking birds. Throughout the novel, Scout has become a literal scout, scouting for truth, who searches for understanding the lessons or insights her father keeps on sharing with her. Along with Jem, she becomes more aware of the community's attitudes, where to position herself. Her experience for the span of 3 years in Macomb has taught her a lot of things about life. Scout and Jem have understood life more outside the classroom. In fact, this is a very ironic final comment on classroom education in the last chapter. Scout says, I thought Jem and I would get grown, but there wasn't much else left for us to learn in the classroom except possibly algebra. Because Scout and Jem felt like for 3 years in Macomb, they've understood the illnesses of Macomb society. And throughout the course of the novel, Scout learns the following truths. The first truth Scout and Jem scouted are the reasons why Boo Radley isolated himself. Boo is mysterious, different from the rest, different from what society expects the white people to be. Boo Radley is a ghost in a sense that the children do not know him. Fear and prejudice surround the Radley house. As the children learn about Boo's isolation, they understand more the society. The children learn that the social mores and prejudices that are ingrained in Macomb are social ills that allow the community to just be passive viewers or witnesses of the abuse that Boo has to suffer from his father. Similarly, these are the same causes which allow Tom Robinson to be killed. Their own prejudices matter more than the truth, more than the lives of the innocent beings, more than the mockingbirds. But at the end of the novel, Scout and Jem realize through Boo the redeeming qualities of humanity. One is compassion. As Atticus sets aside his ethical code of being a lawyer by bravely or by allowing Boo Radley be spared from by allowing Boo Radley from facing the jury because of the death of Bob Ewell, and of course by being just as Atticus sets aside his social position and bravely and fairly defending a man who is already convicted even before the trial, and being courageous. And how in the novel it was shown through the character of Mr. Underwood, who puts aside his prejudice by willingly watching Atticus the night before he faces the jury. And to conclude, what made this coming of age novel of Harper Lee iconic is its attempt to explore the roots of prejudices and injustices of the American South. Yet, amidst all these forms of injustices and prejudices, the novel underscores the value of empathy. As what Atticus has put it, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside of his skin and walk around it. The unfortunate fates of the mockingbirds, in which their innocence is ruined by prejudice, are a reminder about the dangers of or fear of truth and lack of knowledge. The novel encourages us to embrace truth, to speak truth and be the truth. And it's a reminder again of the dangers of fear of truth and lack of knowledge. It's our moral responsibility to be empathetic and fair to different races, socioeconomic statuses, cultures, and genders, regardless of who they are. And this is just one of the truths about humanity that the novel offers. After all, there's just one kind of folks. And this ends my presentation. These are the works that I've cited. Dios mabalos po.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Elsie, for opening this conversation in relation to truth and fiction through the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. So to those who have not yet read this novel, hopefully you're inspired to do so after this conversation. So again, a warm virtual round of applause to our second speaker, Ma'am Elsie Albis. Now we will be entertaining questions from our participants. We are allotting 10 minutes for the open forum. You may want to use the chat box for your questions, comments, insights, reactions, or you can click the raise hand button and unmute your microphone so you could ask your question directly to our resource speakers. We'll also be inviting our participants through FB Live to also share their reactions through FB Live. Okay, so I think there is a question here earlier on, and perhaps we could direct this question both to our resource speaker, Sir Adrian and Ma'am Elsie. There is a question here from Ma'am Sheena Haushan. When fiction becomes more enchanting and enticing over reality, as it usually is, I think, which unfortunately is capitalized on by fake news peddlers, how can the call to return to facts be made effective? So, Sir Adrian and Ma'am Elsie, who would
Hi.
like to go first to answer this question?
Okay. Hi,
Sir Adrian.
congratulations. Congratulations, Elsie. Very good presentation. Well, yeah, fiction tends to be more enticing than uh, reality considered as the state of affairs, right? But we have to make this clear that fiction does not replace facts about state of affairs. As I was trying to stress earlier, fiction is fiction has a different realm. It's a different locus. Okay, so while fiction may inspire us, okay, fiction may inspire us to do an action. Like for example, after listening to Elsie, right, on how oh no, we don't want prejudice anymore, right? We don't want to suffer how these mockingbirds suffered before. It's thanks to the fiction, right? It's the power of the fiction to really present reality. This is what I mean when it augments our imagination. I don't need to put my hand on fire to prove that it's gonna get burned, right? Just by listening or by reading to the fiction, I know that it will happen. So fiction does not diminish reality. Fiction augments it, expands it. So we have to make sure that we don't get lost along the way. Concrete actions about history, about politics, okay, need to be done in our concrete state of affairs. Fictions may inspire us to do these actions, but we always need to get back to our world. This is still where the action must be waged. Thank you.
And of
Okay.
course, Ma'am Elsie.
Uh,
Yes,
to
po, go
answer
ahead.
to answer that question, I'd like to relate it to the style, the literary style, which is magical realism. In Latin America, magical realism is a notable style because the writers there could not really write the actual reality because they have to use fantasy, magical elements in order to reflect reality because it's subtle and magical realism as a political critique allows the writers and the viewers to reimagine how reality could have been. So the enchanting element of fiction is there because it mirrors our subconscious, subconscious, the parang tawag dyan, subconscious of the collective. The enchanting element of fiction reflects how we wish the society is. So whenever we see fantasy and literature, magical elements, it just shows how sad the reality is. You get, parang here's fantasy and here's the reality. Parang may blurring of boundaries between fantasy and reality. Pero in reality, outside it, we can see na depressing ang reality. So nire-reimagine lang siya para mas to express, to reimagine, to represent the harsh reality. Kaya nga ang magical realism, it's not just fantasy. It's a political critique about the sad state of Latin America. And in the Philippines, it's a new element, parang few writers are exploring it, and we are also trying to redefine our own magical realism na iba naman sa Latin America, iba din ang Filipino magical realism. So if we writers and maybe readers try to explore magical realism, it will reflect the kind of society we have. Actually, I remember a classmate of mine who won the Carlos Palanca Award. Ang argument niya is, para sa kanya, ang magical realist element ng Pilipinas ay gusto niyang i-associate sa ignorance. Parang nagiging enchanting sa atin ang mga bagay-bagay. And kasi, we lack knowledge. For example, ang setting ng story niya ay Payatas dump site. May nakitang golden na parang Christmas decor, parang golden ball na Christmas decor. So, nang nakita yun ng isang bata sa Payatas, nagpatayan sila. Without knowing na hindi naman talaga siya totoong gold. But for the people for the children out of ignorance or innocence, think that the ball is really gold, that will help them overcome or help them get away from poverty. So, yun nga, enchanting siya, but it reflects the sad reality na innocence and then lack of knowledge, and at the same time of poverty, which is a never-ending problem of our society. So yun. So kumbaga, fantasy to mirror reality.
Thank you, Sir Adrian and Ma'am Elsie. Another question here sent to me through private message. So this is for Ma'am Elsie. In theory, it is easy to say it is abhorrent to kill mockingbirds. But in practice, how do we respond to those who kill mockingbird, especially in the academic setting or in the workplace?
So in theory, it's easy to say that killing a mockingbird is a sin. But in relation to workplace, what can I say about killing a mockingbird in the workplace? So yun nga, we have to avoid our biases, our prejudices. Kaya okay nga yung empty your cup. Kung ano may narinig mo about this certain person or this certain workmates of yours, ignore. You have to experience. Diba in the novel, Scout and Jeremy learn about life through experience. They did not base their ideas, their ideologies on rumors or baseless hearsays. So yun yung gagawin natin. We need to know the person. We need to have a proper interaction with this person, with this workmate, before we arrive at certain conclusions that may harm this person. So allow these people to grow, these mockingbirds to grow. Do not kill them without letting them fly or sing. So let them sing.
Thank you, Ma'am Elsie. Let me check the Facebook Live, and there's a question from Sir Toriano, Seth Toriano. I'm not sure if you can read this, Ma'am Elsie, but let me read this question. In the novel, there is a messianic component in the character of Atticus Finch. In the dismantling of the structure of racist or misogynist power, there is messianic component shrouding those that are privileged to see such power imbalances. The question is, how can we, as privileged or advantaged individuals, do away with another phenomenon of othering or this messianic complex towards marginalized?
Actually, that's the challenge for us. I will, in Latin America, they call these people as lettered city or the intellectual elites. As privileged people who have access to education. When I say privilege here, I don't mean yung privilege when it comes to financial status. I mean being informed, being educated, privileged by being like Jose Rizal and those who are able to access education. So since you have access to education, you can use that already to help others. And again nga, yung bias mo, to inform your bias about, to reform your bias about other people. So we really have a big challenge on how we can help the society parang lessen how we ostracize the others. For example, sa politics ngayon, di ba may social division between the kakampings and then the BBM supporters. And actually, it's sad to see a lot of posts from the kakamping claiming na, hindi kami bayaran, tingnan nyo, nandito kami sa Starbucks, etc. Tapos minomock nila yung mga BBM supporters na parang, parang nasa video okayan, sisig nga po, parang nasa bar, ganon. Actually, my reading to that is that parang these people are having fun making fun of the lettered city. It's an attack to the lettered city. Kaya kung patuloy natin yung gagawin as privileged people, then we are not doing anything right to correct the system. Or not, I don't know if that's the right term, to correct the system, but to change the system. Kasi we keep on ostracizing them and telling them that we are so privileged. So mas lalong nagkakaroon ng social division. So ang challenge, paano natin pagdudugtungin ang mga BBM and kakamping, ano yung magiging common ground natin? Paano? Papatuloy pa ba natin yung pagiging nating feeling elite, feeling privilege? Tama ba yun? I don't think so.
Thank you, Ma'am Els. And last question, perhaps, that you could accommodate before we proceed to the next part of our event. From another question from Sir Dom. Okay, Sir Dre, would you like to answer also? Sir Dre? Sir, you're on mute. Go ahead.
That's a very interesting question kasi diba? It's always a question. So what can we do? I mean, you see, this is happening in fiction. Like there is we see from fiction how killing a mockingbird, or what's the result of killing a mockingbird? What are the powers that are involved, and what are the effects? And so we always ask, so what are we going to do? But the point of fiction is precisely that. To show us, albeit, okay, being referred elsewhere, right? By fictionalizing human situation, by fictionalizing human intersubjectivity, the more that we realize, the more that we come back, we return to our actual world, enriched, right? Now we know the lesson. Okay, that's why some in some literary theorists today would say that no, a story does not necessarily need to teach a lesson, right? There are already theorists that argue with that. But Paul Ricoeur would say no, a story would always teach a lesson. And why is that? Because a story always involves human actions. Fiction involves human actions, and that's why we can always empathize what happens to what when something happens. And by that alone, it is already something that fiction is doing in our lives. So the more that we encourage to read fictions, the more that we enrich the way we live in our actual world. Right? So what we gonna do? That precisely is what Paul Ricoeur says, the proposed meaning of the text. That proves the power of fiction. We may not have an answer right now, but surely the fiction, the fiction that we are reading, in particular today, the To Kill a Mockingbird, right? The fiction is telling us today, okay, what are the effects of our action? And from there we can start. What are we going to do? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Dre. And I think this that response or question is related also to this last question. And for sure, Ma'am Els and Sir Dre would also still like to respond to this question. In Kill the Mockingbird, Finch courageously defends Tom, going against the grain of the social norm. In doing so, he upheld his principles but also endured personal costs. For modern example, people might speak out about injustices, may be at risk of being silenced in one way or another. Even health workers who volunteer at remote place get shot at for whatever motives. Now the question is, what might we do to encourage other people in our own time to fight against injustice despite the possible risks it might pose themselves? So, Ma'am Els, and then Sir Dra will ask later.
It's a really difficult question. I think each of us has different answer to that. And personally, as a literature teacher, what can I do? So I use literature to help inform others. I use literature to help inform others, especially my students, because in the future these students will become teachers, will become taxpayers, will become parents. They will be able to extend the ideas ingrained in literature that may help them interact with other. And actually, writers are nowadays are very brave, very courageous in fighting for what they think is right, even if it will cost their lives. And I think it's part of through history. If we will be looking at history, it's already part of it that some people really, how yun nga yung sad part. I think actually literature has explored it. We need sacrifice is needed. And yun nga, na-explore na yun sa literature, yung maraming mga who lost their lives for fighting what is right. And I don't know why is it that kailangan palaging may death for people to learn something. Bakit ganon? Sinasabi na nga ni Art of War ni Conchu, the greatest victory is that which requires no battle. Pero bakit kailangan, why is it people, for them to learn, kailangan maraming death na involved? And whenever I look at our history, kasi iniisip ko bakit tayong mga Pilipino, it seems like we are forgetting our history. We keep on repeating the same mistakes of our ancestors. We keep on re-electing the corrupt people. Why is it? So I think that kulang pa yung mga sacrifices, kulang pa yung dinadanas natin. Pero sana maiwasan na natin yung deadly war for us to learn something. And through literature, through history, through news, actual news, I hope we'll learn something from these experiences of the past so that we will have parang yun, a victory that requires no battle. So yun, I hope we learn from our literature.
Thank
I
you,
don't know if I
Ma'am
answered
Els.
that question.
Okay, and Sir Adrian. Thank you, Ma'am Els. Sir Adrian, anything else to add?
What was the question again?
Sorry. Let me repeat that for you, sir. What might we do to encourage other people in our own time to fight against injustice despite the possible risks it might pose themselves?
On top of my head right now, what can we do with respect in the context of our conversation this afternoon? What can we do? A very concrete thing that we can do is to tell more stories. Tell more stories. Tell more stories about our society. Tell more stories about our lives. Listen, not only tell more stories, listen to more stories. Listen and listen and listen to more stories. Because there is the more that we enter, we engage in narrative exchange. Okay? The more that we empathize, the more that we understand, okay, the context, the point of view of other person, and that's how we can fashion a better. Is it a hope? Is it is it a hope to still fashion a better world? Of course it is. It is. Is it a utopia? Perhaps it is. Perhaps it is utopia. But without utopia, how can we refashion the world right now? We need a bit of utopia to think of how can we fashion a better world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Adrian. And there's an insight here from Ma'am Hannah Romero. I think there is a responsibility that is given to both the fiction writer and then the reader. To the writer to avoid failing in representation, and to the reader, if he may fail to be in the realm of the fiction, to participate in conversations or dialogues, to take him back to the fiction to avoid being misinformed and disinformed. So, still in connection to what was said by Sir
I agree.
Adrian. Okay.
I
Thank
agree,
you.
Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. To those who asked their question, to those who participated in the conversation, and of course to Ma'am Els and to Sir Adrian. Thank you so much, okay, for this meaningful and insightful conversation. So we now proceed to the presentation of certificate. We don't have much time anymore to accommodate more questions. So let's proceed to the awarding of certificate to our second speaker, Ma'am Elsie. So let me read the citation. Certificate of Appreciation, Ateneo Naga University Creative Endeavors Council. This is awarded to LCC Albis in grateful appreciation of her valuable contribution as resource speaker during the Literature Month webinar with the title Literature, Fiction, and Truth-Telling Amid Online Misinformation, held on April 22, 2022 at the Ateneo de Naga University. Given this 22nd day of April 2022 at the Ateneo de Naga University, Naga City. Signed by Dr. Margarita Fajardo, Race Dean, and signed by Mr. Joseph Riboriano, CEC Chair. So again, a round of applause to our two speakers this afternoon, to Ma'am Elsie and to Sir Adrian. Thank you so much for your presence, for your valuable input. So we now proceed to the closing remarks. At this point, may we call in Dr. K. Dayan, Creative Endeavors Council Unit Head for Literature, for the closing remarks. Doc K.
Diyos maray na hapon sa kabos. Good afternoon to you all. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for attending our webinar this afternoon. Also, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to our resource speakers, Mr. Adrian Remodo of the Philosophy Department and Ms. Elsie Albis of the Literature and Language Studies Department of the Ateneo de Naga University for sharing their knowledge and insights on the topic literature, fiction, and truth-telling amid online misinformation. To our university president, Father Robert Ezekiel Rivera, for his continuing encouragement and support to the Creative Endeavors Council. To our dean in the Office of Research and Creative Endeavors, Dr. Margarita Fajardo, the chair of the University Research Council, Dr. Federico Lagdameo, and the chair of the Creative Endeavors Council, Mr. Joseph Riboriano, for always being at the forefront, making ends meet, just to make sure that creative endeavors and literary initiatives prosper in the university, especially in this time of continuing crisis. Mr. Lau Pakulan, CAC member for Digital Arts, for the PubMat and Visual Designs, and of course, finally, to Dr. Peñafrancia Olayan Reyta of the Literature and Language Studies Department of the Ateneo de Naga University for gracing us with her presence as our very own MC for today's webinar. Recently, there have been rounds of misinformation spread around Harper's To Kill a Mockingbird, a Pulitzer Prize recipient, saying that it is allegedly a dangerous text which promotes only cruelty and violence. This kind of false information misguides young learners and negatively affects public perception of literature. Writing fiction or literature, as many of us understand, concerns creative language and imagination, while history, conversely, is perceived as factual and objective. Writing as a tradition, however, has the credence as a vehicle for both fact and fiction. And some fictive texts, like myths, in fact have been accepted as truth on the basis of faith. But following the thoughts of our resource speakers, truthfulness in fiction is not about the truth per se, but rather an illusion of truth. To cite the words of the poet Sherrod Santos, writers create this illusion by speaking honestly about real-life experiences and realities through unmediated articulation of a deeply powerful truth, which is not a function of mimesis, but an invention and representation all at once. Confessional writings, for example, as also outlined by Neil Garcia in his recent Busila anthology, speak about and as oneself in the personal and autobiographical register, creating again this illusion of three-dimensional space where fiction commensurates to the truth. And these personal and confessional fictions are very much compelling that they assume the power of myth, which is another form of cultural fiction, thereby naturalizing themselves as facts. Though fictive and literary in nature, texts like that of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird also contains facts which hold the powerful truth of empathy and justice. Therefore, literature is not purely imaginary, but also truthful. Fiction is not fake news, for there is indeed truth in fiction. This webinar is first of the many upcoming activities that the Creative Endeavors Council has in store for all of you. As we take part in this year's celebration of National Literature Month, we continue to encourage more people to actively participate in literary conversations and interactive discussions, both in local and national settings, as more literary texts enter public discourse on social media. We thank again our dear resource speakers for providing more clarity and context on the functional role of literature and fiction and their important part in raising awareness on intersectionality. Indeed, we can say we all have been enlightened with more knowledge and understanding of literature and fiction as they shape public discourse and the society at large, especially amid the continuing threat of online misinformation. And we hopefully we bring all our learnings today from this webinar and apply them as we take on our social responsibility to educate others, not only for their individual character development, but also for their emancipation from shackles of ignorance and indifference. Of course, through teaching literature and fiction and truth telling. We hope that you all had a good time listening to the lectures, and we wish to see you again in our next webinar. May God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Stay safe and healthy. To God be the glory. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc K. And we also congratulate you and your team for initiating this activity. Thank you also for your invitation. And we look forward to attending more webinars organized by Creative Endeavors Council. So at this point, may we invite before we end our session, may we invite all participants and resource speakers, of course, to open their cameras for the photo documentation. And can I please also ask assistance from our organizers in the photo documentation? Okay, so sige po. Let's have the photo up now. 1, 2, 3, smile. Another one. 1, 2, 3, smile. And lastly, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Thank you. Thank you again. And that concludes our event this afternoon. Congratulations. We would like to thank our resource speakers, Sir Adrian Remodo and Ma'am Elsie Albis, for a very insightful and enriching session today. And thank you also to our to the organizers of this event. And of
Thank you very
course,
much.
we would like to thank all our participants who attended our session. Thank you all and have a great afternoon, everybody. Diyos mabalos. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rick.
Hello.
Bonjour, Rick.
Bonjour.
Thank you for coming.